Good day, boxing fans. What is going on in the sport that we love? I'm not talking South Africa as such, I'm talking worldwide. Because this week we've got the news that SHOWTIME boxing is on its way out. They're stopping their sports department, and with that goes boxing. Quite a while back we had HBO leaving boxing, and the pond just seems to be shrinking and shrinking in terms of the coverage that boxing gets. And it is not good for the sport, in my opinion. And what is the reason for it? That's what I'm trying to get behind. So if that's a conversation that you're interested in, if you want to listen to my thoughts, and also please comment and give your thoughts in the comment section below, then stick around. Okay guys, so SHOWTIME is gone out of boxing. HBO and SHOWTIME, those were the big networks, and we have a pay-per-view model, we have a subscription model, we do have other things like streaming apps like DAZN and so forth. But is it a good or a bad thing that HBO is gone and now SHOWTIME as well? Now, I've seen a comment, I've shared a very good article by Kevin Ioli of Yahoo Sports. Go and read that about SHOWTIME leaving boxing and the reasons for it. And one of the comments below on my Facebook post by Sean, I think it was Sean Miller, he said, no, that's good. Let SHOWTIME be gone, because the networks are the reason that we don't have good boxing, because they don't want to risk their fighters against each other. And there's truth in that, that is true. But I don't think it's a good that SHOWTIME is gone or that HBO is gone. Because I believe even if we have one network, sure, then the fighters can fight each other, but they will never be able to be big enough to cover the entire sport. No network is going to be dedicated solely to broadcasting boxing. I very much doubt that. So if there's one network, what happens to all the other fighters worldwide? There's simply not enough slots to accommodate everybody. So I think the more successful promoters there are in boxing, the better it is for the sport. The more TV networks we have, or streaming networks, whether it's TV or streaming, to me it's the same thing. You're watching something from a screen, so that's what I see as TV. But if we have less and less of them, it's less exposure for the sport. It's definitely not a good thing. And why is the sport under so much pressure? Well, I think boxing never fails to shoot itself in the foot. That is true, it can't be denied. And people have various reasons for it. And one of the reasons that I see debated quite a lot, Ryan Kinzet, who plays the head honcho, one of the prediction leagues I play in, who also has some interesting opinions about boxing. And I think also Peter Solkoff, a boxing glove there on Facebook. They chalk it up, not entirely, but to the sanctioning body situation, the proliferation and the devaluing of titles. Now, I don't think that's the main reason. I don't think it helps. But the reason I say so, and I'm a guy that traditionally likes the idea of one champion, who doesn't, and that's where I started in my journey as boxing. My first article that I ever had published in Boxing World, that's a South African trade magazine at that time, long ago, was lamenting the formation of a WBO, who is now one of the big four sanctioning bodies. And now we have more, we have an IBO and so on, but mostly these big four sanctioning bodies, by and large, are recognized by the public. But I don't think that is the major thing, the devaluation of titles. We do have a very good idea who the top guy in some of the weight divisions are. For instance, heavyweight is a bit muddled now because of all Fury's threatened retirements. But if he just stayed active like a regular guy, he would be the top dog in the division. Then cruiserweight, we've got Jai Opataya, who beat the man who was Maurice Breeders, who came through the Super 6. I am a correspondent for the ring, so obviously I like the ring belt. I think that's most of the time, 99% of the time, the holder of that, if there is one, will be the best guy in the division. Here and there's been odd occasions where I've disagreed with him. And if we go down there, light heavyweight is a bit of a conundrum, but at least there's two clear top guys, Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. Super middleweight is clear, it's Canelo Alvarez. Middleweight is muddled. Junior middleweight is clear. The guy there is Jamel Charlo, and Kostya Tszyu coming up. If we go to welterweight, there's a clear champion there. That's Terence Crawford. Junior welterweight, it's Teofimo Lopez, although you may argue that he beat the man, but Josh Taylor was lucky to get past Jack Catterall, and so on and so forth. Lightweight, the man there was Devin Haney. If we go to junior featherweight, there's still 2 more sanctioning body belts left, but I don't think anybody's going to dispute that Naoya Inoue is the best after his performance against Stephen Fulton. Junior flyweight, for instance, Ken Shirotaraji, he's the guy there. So there's a lot of weight divisions in boxing where if you are a hardcore fan or a reasonably astute boxing fan, you'll know who the top guy is. The casual fans, yes, they won't know. It's too complicated for them. They'll take whoever holds a belt and takes their fancy. But I would argue that that's not the reason why people get turned off from boxing. I don't think we're ever going to change the sanctioning body thing. And you also have to keep in mind the guys who rail against the sanctioning bodies, and I think they do a lot of harm. I'm not a fan of them. But you also have to keep in mind, usually these people are speaking from a Eurocentric, a UK-centric, a US-centric perspective. They're not sitting in a third world country like me. If we had one champion in each of the weight divisions, it's going to be very, very hard for a South African, somebody from Asia, somebody from South America to get a title shot. It's going to be exceedingly hard. But I think, an ideal situation would be if we have one champion for each weight division. But because what will happen is all the regional titles will start carrying more weight again, like the national titles, the South African title used to here, like the British title, like the international titles that's regionally based, like the European title, the Commonwealth title, the North American title that's sort of represented by the NABF, or the American title that's represented by the USBA, the Orient and Pacific title. Those belts, if we have one world champion per division, will become a lot more valuable. And we're never going to see that. I'm fairly certain of that. So it's something that I can look past. For me, I recognize the big 4 sanctioning bodies, their top number champion. In other words, not the interims, the regulars, the top tier world champion, I recognize as a world champion. And I recognize the world champion mostly, but not always, as the ring champion. Because, some guys are clearly the best in their division, but you have to be a bit of a hardcore fan to know who is who. But I don't think that is what turns the casuals off boxing. Now, the other problem we have in boxing, of course, is inept or plain corrupt officiating. And it's as old as boxing, from the days of a national sporting club and the mafia control in boxing. It continues to this day, where the promoter's boy or girl, or the fighter that's seen as having the most financial upside for everybody involved, gets the benefit of a doubt on the scorecards. Now, I think there are way too many bad cards. We see handfuls of bad decisions every year. I think sometimes it's a little bit, people get hot under the collar and they sometimes make things into daylight robberies that really is just a close fight. You have to keep in mind, most people don't know how to score. For instance, knockdown does not automatically, it usually, but not automatically, means a 10-8 round. If a fighter is winning the round, or at least is evenish, and he scores a knockdown, he wins it 10-8. But for instance, like the first Evander Holyfield-Michael Moorer fight, when I think it was the second round, the first fight between them, when Moorer was absolutely dominating the round, and then Holyfield towards the end of the round knocked him down with a left hook. That round that Moorer was winning handily, and Holyfield then scored a knockdown, can very easily be scored 10-9 in Holyfield's favour instead of 10-8. Mostly, not necessarily, but it could. So these things people don't always know about scoring a fight. There's another thing about scoring a fight that you should know. It requires absolute concentration. Now, I'm not a judge, but through what I do, I've met a lot of them. I've got to talk to a lot of them. When we had the COVID pandemic, I was locked up in several of these bubbles where you're locked in with the fighters and the officials for 10 days. And in one of them, I was locked in with none other than Hall of Fame referee and judge Stanley Christodoulou, as well as then IBF representative here in South Africa, the late Neville Hotz. And we had time on our hands, so we analysed fights and we talked about judging and scoring fights. And it was very interesting, and I learned a lot through that. Now, what you gotta also understand, like Neville Hotz explained it to me, you've got to absolutely concentrate to score a fight. You look at the arm of a clock and you have to intensely concentrate on it going around. It's an exercise they sometimes do to train their minds. So if you sitting at home eating some chips, you're having a few beers, or you're screaming your head off for your fighter that you support at the fights, that's not the concentration required to score a fight. People forget that. And there's a subjectivity to boxing scoring. There's impact of punches. Now, if you're on the TV, I've been ringside many times. I've been lucky through what I do I usually sit just sort of to the side behind one of the judges or behind the commentary box if I'm not doing the commentary myself there. And you definitely can tell the difference in impact of punches when you are ringside as opposed to on the television. Television takes something off. Nevertheless, we have had horrible cards like the famous Adelaide Bird card in the first Canelo-Golovkin fight, with that Canelo winning by a wide margin. I still maintain it was a close fight. I had Golovkin winning that first fight, but that huge, ridiculous margin, and nothing happens to the officials. There's no sanction to the officials. Mostly the same guys making the same bungles get the plum jobs again and again and again. And it's like that all around the world. Now that is a big problem with boxing. The lack of judging the judges, judging the officials. If an official messes up, he or she need to explain themselves. If they do it continually, they need to be demoted, they need to be retrained. That is a big problem with boxing. That's something that turns people off when the fighter obviously has won and they get screwed out of it. So that is, boxing lends itself to it because of the subjective nature of scoring. It provides that gap. But I think personally there should be continuous evaluation and sanctioning, if need be, of officials, judges and referees alike. Now that is the judges, the officials, the dodgy decisions and the lack of action. So I think that is a major problem in boxing, the lack of that control, and that's something that I would really like to see addressed. But I think the major thing in boxing, why people, or especially the younger crowd, watch mixed martial arts, or they just watch the sort of spectacle of YouTuber boxing, is because the best don't find the best in boxing regularly enough. They do it. For us, our hardcore fans, we're so thankful when they do. We forget about all the times when they don't do it. And I think that is the problem in the sport. And it is a unique sort of sport because basically they put their lives on the line. When you start your career as a pro, that clock basically starts ticking on the damage, and you want to make your money, you want to get out, and still have to be able to have a reasonably normal life and not have too much neurological and brain damage. That's a fact of boxing. So because of that, because of fighter safety, and also because of the almighty dollar, it swings a bit too far to the other side. Because if we look at it, it's been around for a long while now. Like I can go all the way back to Lennox Lewis versus Riddick Bowe, that never happened. And then we have had Sergey Kovalev and Adonis Stevenson, the light heavyweights that never fought. And the WBC tried to enforce it by installing Kovalev as a mandatory contender, but it didn't work because the one was on HBO and the one was on Showtime. That's why we get tired of the networks. But I would argue that you need the networks to work together. You shouldn't have less networks. You have all of that. And then we had to wait forever for Mayweather against Pacquiao to happen. And when it happened a little bit too late. And then recently, at last, we had Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. fighting. And that was a great thing. But still, it could have happened earlier. When all normal casual fans don't want to wait for years for the fights that they want to see to happen. So somewhere there, the pendulum has to swing a little bit towards the middle, and I think that is the major problem that we have in boxing. It's too much cherry picking. It's too many fights where you can just have a fights on the card and you can draw a circle around the A sides on the left, and those would be your winners. There's too much of that. Now, boxing is unique. You have to build a fighter up. You can't overmatch them. It's a safety factor. But There's a time where you have to step up and you either sink or you swim, or you sink and you learn to swim and you learn to swim again. And I think that is a big problem with boxing, because that opens the door to all kinds of other things. Now we have the YouTubers boxing. I've never watched it. I did watch Jake Paul's fight against Tommy Fury, not because I wanted to watch it, but I was watching the card because I wanted to see our guy Ilunga Jr. Makabu against Bardo Jack, and then it was on, so I was sitting there already and I thought, let me watch it. Jake Paul, I have no idea what he really does on YouTube. It's not my kind of thing, but from what my eyes can tell me, he's about the same as any other 8-0 or 7-0, whatever he was for that fight, club fighter on the Midwest club circuit. He trains, he fights like a professional boxer, but he's that level. He's like the level of a 7-0 guy fighting on the Midwest somewhere there in the south of America. He's about that level of a boxer, and he gets paid millions and millions for it. That is where it is different, and people flock in to watch that. Now, I think it's because we don't have enough of these big fights, the best fighting the best regularly enough in boxing, because if that goes on, then people will not necessarily watch that. And I don't buy the argument that these celebrity boxers, these YouTube boxers bring new fans to the sport. They don't bring fans to the sport. Those people don't know what they're watching. They are not interested in learning what they're watching. They're just there for spectacle. It's the same as a pro wrestling match. Not that I have anything against pro wrestlers. That's a different skill set. That's sports entertainment. But they are there for the spectacle. They are not there for anything else. And then we've got another problem in boxing is we've got the heavyweight champion, the lineal champion and WBC champion. He would have been the ring champion still if he didn't suddenly retire and unretire himself. Now that's Alexander Usyk. We're waiting for Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk. The best fighting the best usually makes for great fights. It almost always does. I don't think, sometimes it's a bad style matchup. I don't think Fury against Usyk will be a particularly good fight, but we need that to unify the heavyweight division, because that elevates the sport. Now, what is happening now? Apparently they've signed to fight. Apparently it's going to happen sometime early next year. I've had so much BS with that. I'm so fed up with it. I don't even care. I'll believe it when the venue and the date is set. But we have Fury fighting former MMA mixed martial arts UFC champion Francis Ngannou next weekend somewhere in the Arab Emirates for an obscene amount of money. Now, I haven't got a problem with Tyson Fury fighting Francis Ngannou. I'm not going to bother to watch it. I might watch the card because Fabio Wardley and Martin Bakole and Joseph Parker, some decent heavyweights on the card. I might watch that. But I'm not really interested. I know what's going to happen. I'm pretty sure it's going to be like Mayweather McGregor. Fury is going to toy with him, maybe give him a few gaps, of course, for a dramatic moment of two, and then he's going to knock him out after it's gone a couple of rounds. So that's logical. If Fury were to fight him in the cage under MMA rules, then Ngannou will break his arm and probably end his boxing career. Anybody can see that, but I don't know. The audience these days don't seem to be able to think for themselves. Now, I haven't got a problem with Fury making some money against Ngannou. We had Muhammad Ali fighting the wrestler Antonio Inoki there back in Japan all these years ago, 1976. But the difference is, in that year that Ali fought Inoki, he fought 4 times as a boxer, defended his title. 2 of them were gimmies against Jean-Pierre Koopman, who can forget that, and Richard Dunn. But the other 2 was a very tricky Jimmy Young, that they just got past George Foreman, and of course, his third fight with Ken Norton in 1976, and he fitted in Inoki in between. Now, we all know Ali's health suffered because of all the tough fights that he had. I'm not expecting Tyson Fury to do the same, but it would have been bloody nice if he just took on Alexander Usyk this year, and then he can go and fight Ngannou. That would have been fine. Or even just Anthony Joshua. That would have been, I would settle for that too, but he hasn't fought for this entire year, and now he's fighting an MMA guy. And that is a kind of thing that frustrates people, that turns them off boxing, and it brings in the kind of fan that wants to watch Fury against Ngannou because they don't know any better or they don't care. They're there for a spectacle. The type of people that watch Logan Paul or Jake Paul or KSI, those kind of people. And you know, to be quite frankly, if somebody's going to offer me millions to fight Jake Paul or Logan Paul, whoever, I will do it. I mean, who wouldn't do it? So I don't blame the people participating in it. It's actually boxing that creates that gap, because the best don't fight the best often enough. We've got Canelo Alvarez that has now just finished fighting Jamal Charlo, who was the undisputed junior middleweight champion. It was a guy going up in weight. I think it was Canelo fights big names quite regularly, but we all want him to fight David Benavidez, and that fight's not happening. At least Benavidez is fighting Demetrius Andrade. Now finally you have some PBC fighters fighting each other, but it's too little too late. That was the trouble with the PBC and Al Heyman. They kept everything in-house. So marinating forever, fighting each other, there weren't enough good fights. So I'm saying more of the best fighting the best more regularly. Not as much as it used to be in the 70s maybe. I know there's fighter safety. I'm not saying it needs to be like the UFC, because believe you me, MMA will also damage you long term. It just hasn't been around long enough. And remember, there's more than brain damage or neurological damage. I can attest to that. I used to be a high school wrestler. I still have a busted knee from that. So MMA has got its own dangers. I'm not quite sure it is necessarily less dangerous than boxing. But that is what I think. Guys, let me know in the comment section. Do you think the thing that hurts boxing is a proliferation of sanctioning bodies and titles? Do you think it is inept and corrupt officiating? Or do you think it is the best not fighting the best often enough? I think all these things together play a role, a negative role. But I think the biggest problem is it's too much of boxing is a business, and it's a professional sport. It's always a business, but it's too much of boxing is a business, the easiest money, the easiest, quickest way, and too little about caring about the sport, caring about legacy. And I think that is where the problem lies in boxing today. And that's why networks like Showtime and HBO have left. There's budgetary constraints. We're in a different economy. We're in a changing world. But I think the best fight the best more often enough. If, for instance, we can get Dmitry Bivol fighting Arthur Beterbiev, not end of next year, but before the end of this year, and that won't happen, but theoretically, if they fought this year, that would have been a lot better. If I can take a leaf out of a book of Naoya Inoue, the lighter weights usually the best fight the best, because there's no other way. So Inoue will fight Maxayel for all the marbles, a junior favorite. Kudos to these guys. You know, and in the female game, we see the best fighting the best often. But then also we have someone like Layla McCarter, who's been around forever, and she can't land a major fight with somebody like even Jessica McCaskill. Never mind a Katie Taylor or somebody like that. What's up with that? Why is Layla McCarter fighting meaningless fights and never getting a big shot? There's that one thing there in women's boxing that I don't understand too. So that is my rant and my rave for today. I hope the boxing world takes it to heart. Showtime leaving. You know, in South Africa we've had Super Sport. We've got now and then streaming networks that pop up, and we have SABC that's very erratic. And then we had on ESPN Africa, we had one show a month last year, and that's now been canned. Lots of reasons why that happened, but it's definitely not good for South African boxing. And just like that, I think these networks leaving boxing is not good for boxing on the world scene. Will boxing die? No, it won't. It will always be there, I think. It's just something that feeds into our dark nature as human beings. And will it change? You know, I think the thing that keeps boxing from changing for the better, the things that we've discussed here today, is simply because it's something that mainstream society don't care about. And a very well-known trainer manager here in South Africa, we were sitting at a weigh-in once years ago, and we were talking about boxing in general, and he mentioned that about once or twice every year at a cocktail party or some party, somebody would tell him, I can't believe you're involved in boxing. What a horrible sport. People put permanent damage on each other, and it kills people and so on. And he told him, yes, but it also saves lives. Now that's a topic for a whole other video. Clearly I'm a boxing guy, but I suspect that is also the part. Mainstream society, because he was saying that, and I'm a small-time guy, I've did a bit of TV commentary on a few small stations here in South Africa, and mostly I'm just on YouTube, and I have a modest little 700 words every month in the ring, and now I'm in some other publications and on ringtv.com. But even me, you know, I would get it from family, friends, just general public, also once or twice a year. Geez, we're happy that you can live your dream, and you're so excited to have this involvement in boxing that you sometimes have. But geez, I don't know how you can live with your conscience. And that is the view that mainstream society has of boxing. And I think that is one of the reasons why it doesn't change, because for it to change, some prominent politicians or government types worldwide will have to take it up and not ruin the sport, do the correct things for the sport. I think the last politician that cared was maybe the late John McCain. But somebody like that needs to pick up the ball. Somebody with a lot of money, billions and billions, somebody like Elon Musk must buy out all the sanctioning bodies or something like that. But I doubt that will ever happen, because people see boxing sort of in that sort of over-refined mainstream section of society, much the way that I would abhor dogfighting or cockfighting. They see boxing the same as that. They can't see the difference. So what's the point of regulating something like that that in their eyes shouldn't even be there? And I think that also is the conundrum with boxing sometimes. Well, that has been a long rant. These are the things that I think are hurting boxing, and these are the things that I hope can change. But I'm very skeptical and sometimes cynical about it. But at least this weekend we're going to have Jack Catterall against Jorge Linares, not a fight that I'm overly excited about. And we've got Mzuvukile Makwaka, a junior featherweight, fighting there in Mexico tomorrow night. We wish him good luck. So that's the positives. Of course, I'll be watching. I'm not looking forward to Fury against Ngannou. I don't care what the Paul brothers does. I really don't even know who KSI is, and I don't care. Power to them if they want to box. I'm just sad that by making all those millions, where some fighters that risk their lives, not that they don't take on some risk as well. Somebody's going to get hurt in that YouTuber slugging at some point. But it's just sad, you know, that influencers can rake in all the attention and money in a sport like boxing that is such a high risk thing, and not the boxers themselves. But what can you do about it? But boxing needs to get its act together. Not sometimes, they need to get their act together more often than not, and they need to close those doors where all these gaps are happening and all these people are streaming in. So that's my 2 bits. Guys, please remember, if you've watched this far, hit that thumbs up, and I would appreciate you sharing the content if you deem it worthy. And always remember to subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that as well. And until we see each other again, keep those hands up.